With Attorney General Jeff Sessions cracking down on marijuana use across the country, some Massachusetts lawmakers are considering drastic action. Democratic State Representatives Dave Rogers and Mike Connolly have filed a bill called the Refusal of Compliance Act, which for all intents and purposes would make Massachusetts a sanctuary state for marijuana, barring local government officials from devoting any resources or time to helping the federal government investigate or prosecute crimes involving marijuana. Good policy? Achievable policy? Joining me to discuss are Representative Dave Rogers of Cambridge, one of the bill's co-sponsors. Good to see you again, Representative.
Thank you.
Walpole Police Chief John Carmichael, who is also a member of Governor Charlie Baker's Cannabis Advisory Board. It's good to see you again, Chief. Thanks so much for being here. Did I explain that accurately?
Yes. For the most part, I would add one thing, and that's just that it prohibits local law enforcement and state law enforcement from cooperating on enforcing federal law that is legal under Massachusetts.
Yeah, but is it legal for a state to basically say its law will supersede federal law? I mean, there's no question that Sessions is right about the state of the federal law. Your problem is he should act like Barack Obama and his Attorney General not enforce it, right?
Correct.
I mean, the federal law is the law.
Correct.
So you can undo the federal law on Beacon Hill?
Well, it's just saying
for us?
Yeah, well, we could just saying that local law enforcement, it is permissible for a state statute to say, we're not saying the feds can't enforce their law. We're saying state and local law enforcement should not expend resources.
So if they want to send federal agents in to enforce federal law, that would be perfectly permissible under the state statute?
Correct.
What's your problem with this, Chief?
Well, I don't think it's necessary, number one.
Why?
Well, because chiefs of police that run their police departments across Massachusetts don't think it's necessary because we're not going to be going in and working with the federal government and taking out dispensaries or cultivation sites that are in compliance with Massachusetts law anyway. So it's kind of putting us in a bad position, and we want to make sure that we don't take out our partnership and our enforcement mechanism to work with the federal government when there is issues such as diversion and that type of thing.
When you say chiefs in Massachusetts don't think it's necessary, from my understanding, chiefs in Boston and Worcester have affirmatively said they're not going to play this federal game. They obviously thought it was necessary, didn't they?
Exactly, but that's the chiefs are making that policy decision, and I would make probably the same policy decision on my department. But, you know, we can't put barriers in front of investigation and enforcement side of it because we will have issues with diversion and we will have issues with criminal enterprises being involved. And if we can't at least initiate the investigation, we may not know if that is a violation of federal law or if it's a violation of mass law. And we shouldn't put those barriers in front of us.
Does this move you at all or no?
No, respectfully, no.
Why?
Because we had an exhaustive process to craft the law. First, the voter initiative, which was hotly contested, hotly debated, widely publicized. And then the legislature took it up, and it was, in terms of our legislative bandwidth, one of the biggest things we did last year. So a lot of resources were devoted to crafting sensible amendments to the law. So we have a very carefully developed law. Now, the Attorney General, who opposed legalization, the Governor, who opposed legalization, and our state treasurer, who opposed legalization, and are the state law enforcement officials charged with enforcing the law, have all come out and said they oppose this Trump-era federal law that says...
Yeah, but I asked the governor on the radio yesterday if he supported your legislation, and he didn't commit to it at all. He says, I want to see it, I don't comment on legislation.
He never does, though.
I understand, but so you have him on your side being upset with Jeff Sessions. You don't have him on your side yet, at least, on this bill. Are you troubled by what Sessions, the Attorney General, has said and what Andrew Lelling, the new U.S. Attorney, has suggested, that while opioids will be his first priority, he's not suggesting dispensaries or banks will be immune from prosecution under federal law? Doesn't that make your job much harder?
Well, it does, because you have that difference between federal and state law. So, yeah, it puts us in a difficult position. But, you know, when you look back at how we got to here, where we are right now, when the Cole Memo was in place, and you had...
Cole Memo meaning under Eric Holder when he was Attorney General for Barack Obama.
And you had enforcement priorities, i.e. diversion and diversion to youth and crossing state lines and all that. That was in place, but it wasn't enforced.
So wouldn't a person... It seems to me that a person who you're responsible for in your community, if he or she turned on the television, I mean, they turn it on and say to themselves, wait a second, Jeff Sessions says it's illegal. I thought I voted and the people of Massachusetts said it was legal. Wouldn't it be better if they turned on the TV at night and heard we now have a state law, thanks to the men and women on Beacon Hill, that says the people we pay, like you, are not going to play that game. If the feds want to do their thing, fine, but we're listening to the voice of the people.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be better and make your job easier?
We still are.
But wouldn't it be easier if there was some formal declaration, like a statute, that you could cite and say, the law of Massachusetts is I cannot participate in this federal effort? Wouldn't that make your job?
No, because we already have those guidelines. We have the law, and we have the amendments that were made to the law, and we have the regulations, the draft regulations that we have right now. So we already have the guidelines that we're supposed to follow, but we need to make sure that we don't take the enforcement mechanism out of that so that when you go outside of those guidelines, that there's someone there to enforce it. And I don't think the people in Massachusetts
enforce federal law or state law?
State law.
Well, you can do that anyway. I mean,
but if
no matter what they do, if
we can't join in with the federal government in an investigation,
why don't you propose an amendment to his law that says this is fine unless state law is violated, which seems to me to be obvious. Anyway, while you're thinking about that, you know, when we talked to the governor, Marjorie and I talked to the governor yesterday, he also talked about a planned meeting he had with Andrew Lelling. He wasn't sure when that was, but here's a little bit of what he said he hoped to achieve in that meeting.
I would much rather have the U.S. attorney spending his time working with us and dealing with fentanyl and dealing with street drugs than dealing with marijuana.
It seems to me that, I don't mean this disrespectfully, that's what you too, and I mean not just you too, but people like you should be doing, joining with the governor saying police chiefs that have concern, legislators that want to ensure that the state law is enforced, go to the U.S. attorney and get a commitment from the U.S. attorney. He is going to focus on opioids and fentanyl and not stand in the way of what the voter mandate was. Isn't that the appropriate next step? Yes,
yeah.
No?
And we can't speak for him, obviously.
Obviously.
But I think that's what they are going to
Have you communicated with him? Have the police chiefs communicated with Lelling yet?
The police chiefs have, and I've communicated with Jeff Sessions when he was here as well.
One last thing before you go. This has not been discussed at all, but we did a little research here. While this has all been focused on recreational marijuana, Jeff Sessions has made it clear he likes the amendment. He doesn't like the amendment, the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment in Congress, which is set to expire, which doesn't allow attorneys general and U.S. attorneys to override state laws on medical marijuana. So I know you weren't crazy about medical marijuana to begin with, but would that not I know you've sort of done a flip. Is that a fair statement? You're okay with that now, right? Yes?
Well, I was obviously against it in the beginning, but when things
I didn't mean that critically.
State, then I
But are you not concerned if he goes that far? If the next thing that he and Lelling potentially go after don't you need this kind of protection for that?
No, I don't think so. Because still under mass law, we're not going to enforce those things. And I don't think
you say that, but that's not codified yet. The biggest police departments, as you noted, Boston and Worcester, but that's a matter of policy. A new police chief could change the rules.
That's true.
This codifies it, and there are 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, not just 2. So the other 349, we don't know. And finally, the state police have said they're not going to enforce it either.
Okay, before we leave,
law.
Toughest question of all. You're from Philadelphia, correct?
I am.
Who are you rooting for on Sunday?
Eagles. How about you?
We got to go. Nice to see you, Representative. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Chief, good to see you. Thank you so much.